Right now, something is draining your energy. You don't feel it happening. You don't see it, but it's there, constant, relentless, taking more from you every single day. And the worst part? You're the one feeding it. Al-Ghazali called this the invisible leak. And he said most people spend their entire lives exhausted because they never learn to see where their energy is actually going. Not into their work, not into their relationships, but into something far more destructive. Think about your typical day. You wake up with a certain amount of energy. Maybe you slept well. Maybe you feel okay. But by noon, you're already tired. By evening, you're drained. And you tell yourself it's normal. It's just life. It's the demands of work, of responsibilities, of everything you have to do. But Al-Ghazali would ask you a different question. What if the exhaustion has nothing to do with how much you're doing? What if it has everything to do with why you're doing it? Because here's what most people don't understand. Energy doesn't come from rest. Energy comes from alignment. You can sleep 12 hours and wake up exhausted if you're living a life that's misaligned with who you actually are. And you can work 14 hours and feel energized if what you're doing resonates with something deep inside you. The difference is not in the hours. The difference is in the source of fuel you're running on. Al-Ghazali identified two types of energy. He called them borrowed energy and true energy. Borrowed energy is what you get from external validation, from achievement, from proving yourself, from meeting expectations, from winning approval. This energy feels good at first. It gives you a rush. It makes you feel like you're on top of the world. But it's temporary. It burns fast. And the moment the validation stops, the moment the achievement fades, the moment people stop applauding, you crash. You feel empty. And you need another hit, another achievement, another validation, another proof that you're enough. This is the invisible leak. This is where most of your energy is going, into the constant pursuit of borrowed energy, into trying to fill a hole that can never be filled from the outside. And the tragedy is that you don't even realize you're doing it. You think you're just being ambitious, just working hard, just trying to make something of yourself. But underneath it all, you're running on a fuel that's slowly destroying you. Because borrowed energy doesn't just drain you when it runs out. It drains you while you're using it. Because deep down, you know it's not real. Deep down, you know you're performing. Deep down, you know that the moment you stop achieving, the moment you stop proving, the moment you stop performing, the energy will disappear. True energy is completely different. True energy comes from within. It comes from doing things that align with your actual values, not the values you think you should have. It comes from connecting with people who see you, not the version of you that you're performing. It comes from pursuing goals that matter to you, not goals that look impressive. True energy doesn't burn out. It doesn't need constant refueling from outside sources. It sustains itself because it's rooted in something real, in something that can't be taken away, in who you actually are. But here's the problem. Most people have been running on borrowed energy for so long that they don't even know what true energy feels like anymore. They've spent years, maybe decades, building a life designed to impress others, designed to meet expectations, designed to prove their worth. And somewhere along the way, they lost touch with what actually energizes them. They forgot what it feels like to do something simply because it matters to them. They forgot what it feels like to be with people without performing. They forgot what it feels like to pursue a goal without needing to prove anything. Al-Ghazali experienced this firsthand. He was at the peak of his career. Respected scholar, prestigious position. Everyone wanted his approval. Everyone sought his wisdom. He had everything that society said would bring fulfillment. But inside, he was empty, exhausted, running on borrowed energy and slowly dying from it. And one day, he couldn't do it anymore. His body gave out. Not because he was working too hard, but because he was working for the wrong reasons. Because every lecture he gave, every student he taught, every achievement he earned was feeding the invisible leak instead of filling his actual soul. So he stopped. He walked away from everything. And in that stopping, in that radical decision to no longer chase borrowed energy, he discovered something profound. True energy was there all along, waiting, quiet, patient. It had always been there. But he'd been too busy chasing validation to notice it, too busy performing to feel it, too busy proving himself to access it. And this is what he wants you to understand. The exhaustion you feel is not because you're doing too much. The exhaustion you feel is because you're doing things for the wrong reasons. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you drain your energy. Every time you perform instead of being genuine, you drain your energy. Every time you chase achievement to prove your worth instead of expressing your truth, you drain your energy. Every time you seek validation from people who don't truly see you, you drain your energy. This is the invisible leak, and it's killing you slowly. So how do you stop it? How do you shift from borrowed energy to true energy? Al-Ghazali said it starts with brutal honesty. You have to look at your life and ask uncomfortable questions. Why am I really doing this? Am I doing it because it matters to me, or because it looks good? Am I pursuing this goal because I want it, or because I think I should want it? Am I in this relationship because I love this person, or because I need their approval? Am I working this hard because I'm passionate, or because I'm trying to prove something? These questions are painful, because the answers reveal how much of your life is built on borrowed energy. How much of what you do every day is performance. How much of your identity is constructed to impress instead of express. But this pain is necessary, because you can't change what you can't see. And most people never see the invisible leak because they're too afraid to look at it. Once you see it, once you admit how much energy you're wasting on things that don't actually matter to you, you can start making different choices. Small ones at first. Saying no to things you don't want to do. Being honest about how you feel instead of performing how you think you should feel. Pursuing something that matters to you, even if it doesn't impress anyone. Spending time with people who see you instead of people whose approval you're chasing. Each of these choices feels risky, because when you stop running on borrowed energy, the external validation stops. People who loved your performance might not love your authenticity. Opportunities that came because you were trying to impress might disappear. The applause might fade, and for a moment you'll feel exposed, vulnerable, like you've lost something important. But what you've actually lost is the exhaustion. What you've actually lost is the constant need to prove yourself. What you've actually lost is the invisible leak that was draining you dry. And in that space, true energy begins to emerge. Not as a rush, not as a high, but as a steady, sustainable force. You wake up and feel present instead of anxious. You work and feel engaged instead of performing. You spend time with people and feel connected instead of evaluated. You pursue goals and feel aligned instead of desperate. This is what it feels like to run on true energy. It's not dramatic. It's not flashy. But it's real. And at last, Al-Ghazali said that most people never experience this because they're addicted to borrowed energy. They're addicted to the rush of achievement, the high of validation, the temporary feeling of being enough that comes from external approval. And like any addiction, it requires more and more to get the same effect. You need bigger achievements, more impressive accomplishments, wider recognition, and the invisible leak grows larger. The exhaustion deepens, until one day you realize you've spent your entire life chasing energy instead of cultivating it. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can choose differently. You can choose to stop feeding the leak. You can choose to start living from your actual values instead of borrowed expectations. You can choose to pursue what energizes you instead of what impresses others. You can choose to be seen for who you are instead of applauded for who you're pretending to be. This is not easy. It requires letting go of the identity you've built. It requires disappointing people. It requires walking away from things that look good but feel empty. But it's the only way to stop being exhausted. It's the only way to access the energy that's been waiting inside you all along. Here's what Al-Ghazali discovered in his years of solitude and study. True energy is infinite. It doesn't run out because it's not dependent on external circumstances. It doesn't deplete because it's rooted in alignment with your actual self. You can give from this energy without becoming empty because you're not performing. You're expressing. And expression, unlike performance, doesn't drain you. It fulfills you. Think about the times in your life when you felt most alive. Not most successful, not most impressive, but most alive. What were you doing? Chances are, you weren't thinking about how it looked. You weren't worried about approval. You weren't performing for an audience. You were simply present, simply engaged, simply being yourself without filter or fear. That's true energy. That's what it feels like when you're not leaking. And that state is available to you right now. Not someday when you've achieved enough. Not after you've proven yourself. Right now, but accessing it requires a radical shift. It requires valuing alignment over achievement, connection over impression, truth over performance, being over doing. And for most people, this feels impossible because they've built their entire identity on borrowed energy. Their whole sense of worth comes from external validation. Their entire life structure depends on the approval they're chasing. And letting go of that feels like death, like losing everything, like becoming nobody. But Al-Ghazali would tell you this is not death. This is birth. What you're losing is the false self, the performing self, the exhausted self that's been trying to earn love instead of accepting it. And what's being born is your actual self, the one that doesn't need to prove anything, the one that has value simply by existing, the one that runs on true energy and never burns out. This self has been waiting your entire life, buried under layers of performance and expectation and borrowed energy, waiting for you to finally stop, to finally rest, to finally come home. The invisible leak stops when you stop feeding it. When you stop living for applause and start living from truth. When you stop chasing borrowed energy and start accessing what's already inside you. This doesn't mean you stop working. This doesn't mean you stop pursuing goals. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you work from a different source. You pursue goals that align with who you are, not who you think you should be. You engage with life from presence instead of performance. And here's what nobody tells you. When you make this shift, when you stop the invisible leak, you don't have less energy. You have more. Because you're no longer wasting it on things that don't matter. You're no longer draining yourself, trying to be someone you're not. You're no longer exhausted from the constant performance. You have energy for what actually matters. For people you love. For work that fulfills you. For pursuits that align with your truth. Not because you're doing less, but because you're no longer leaking. Al-Ghazali's secret is simple but profound. Stop asking what will make you look good and start asking what will make you come alive. Stop seeking energy from validation and start cultivating energy from alignment. Stop performing your life and start living it. The invisible leak closes the moment you choose truth over impression. And in that moment, you discover what's been true all along. You were never running out of energy. You were just using it on the wrong things. True energy was always there, waiting for you to finally stop leaking and start living. The drain stops now, the moment you decide it does.